I want that person.
It's a real good story.
Yes.
No, I'm glad he lived. But the award.
Good boy.
I'm switching my answer now. There we go.
I was just gonna say you want it because you're so sweet and it's
Travis.
There's a semi. Game on! Okay, so we are live and we played the Squad Pod intro. You guys got to give me a little bit of a break here. I'm still doing this. I'm still doing this new thing here. So we are Bougie Sports. I am Heather, and this is our college football recap preview. All of the good things. Check us out at the bottom here. Subscribe on YouTube at Bougie Sports. Check us out on X at Bougie Sports. Check us out on Facebook at Bougie Sports. Check us out everywhere at Bougie Sports, and subscribe, like us. I am your host, Heather, and I want to welcome one of my favorite guests, Ethan. Ethan, you want to tell us about yourself? Give us a little bit of what you do, where we can find you, where we can subscribe to all of your fun things.
Well, thank you very much, Heather. I apologize for any of the technical issues that my end might have caused. I'm gonna blame it on my children or my child. I think there's too many streaming devices. That's got to be it, right?
Yes, I'm gonna blame it on my dog. She's giving us bad juju because I'm being too loud. So we'll blame it on anybody but us.
Exactly. Well, Heather, thank you so much for having me on. I had the pleasure of having you on my podcast, which is at Going Nuclear CLE on Twitter, and on YouTube it's Going Nuclear CLE. To give you your full-blown coverage of the land. You can find me, my personal account, as is posted on my screen there, at egreen4325. And quite frankly, the Facebook, well, that really doesn't go anywhere because I don't have not enough people like me. I guess nobody likes me. I can't stream on there. They cut me off. So anyway, so you can find the podcast, the Going Nuclear CLE. When we do the podcast on the weekly, that will be on my personal handle at egreen4325. But I do have an account for the podcast, and then the YouTube account is at Going Nuclear CLE. Is how you can find us. Please like and subscribe. But again, so glad to be here. It was so much fun having you and your fellow Squad Pod member, Sherry, on the Going Nuclear CLE podcast. We had a great time. It was nice because we got to go on, and we actually got, I know we're talking college football, but we actually got to go on after a Browns win.
We're not used to that. We're not used to this. So we didn't know how to act. We didn't know how to act, and it was unusual. And we were brought down, back to reality last Sunday. So
yes, yeah. Absolutely. No, it's tough life. It is definitely a tough life here. So but yeah, thank you again for having me on. I've been looking forward to this. College football is definitely exciting. And now, I mean, we're going to talk about the game, some of the big games last week, some of the upsets, some of the big games this week, and the expansion of the college football playoffs has created so much of a different feel around college football than we used to have. I mean, we went from no consensus champion when we were growing up to where it's like the number 1 and number 2 team didn't face, to then the BCS. Right. And we thought, oh, that's great. But the CFP, and as you might be able to see, I'm wearing my Ohio State, CFP championship T-shirt in honor of talking about college football here with you. So thank you again for having me on.
Thank you so much for joining. And I should have dug mine out. I have after we beat Alabama, I still have the one WON, one not done. So I still have all that. There's some shirts in my closet that I'm a purger. I don't like hoarding things or keeping things, but there are some in my closet that I will never ever throw away. And the beating Alabama in the what was it, 80 some yards through the heart of the South when Ezekiel Elliott, had that big run. And then, no one gave us a chance to win. And then, we went in and we steamrolled Oregon. So Marcus Mariota, we had a big game. So so I definitely recognize that shirt, and it's a great one. I had to bust out my Ohio State my Ohio State shirt. And I don't want anybody to be watching this thinking that we are going to be solely biased towards Ohio State. We're not. We're going to talk about a lot. We're going to talk about all of college football. And,
Exactly.
I'm very favorable towards Ohio State, but I'm also very realistic about, who they are and what their weaknesses are. And that's one of the things that we'll talk about. And we might as well get right into it because we do have a jam-packed show for you. And at the end, what we want to talk about is the college football playoff landscape. And, for those of you joining, if you're not familiar, there is a big difference in the seedings versus the rankings. So we want to talk about, what the differences are, what that's going to look like. And this was just the first release. And we all know that this is going to change. And it's probably going to change 2 or 3 more times before they come out with the final. So with that being said, let's get into some of the recaps of last week. Last week was not a heavy ranked matchup, and normally that in past years that has meant calm. That has meant we're not going to see a lot of upsets. We're not going to see a lot of turmoil. But this year, every week I've said, "Oh, I don't know. I don't think that's going to be too exciting," and every week it proves me wrong. So this week, let's start with the Texas A&M versus South Carolina. Number 10, Texas A&M versus unranked South Carolina. So, tell me your thoughts on that game. A&M lost 20-44.
A crazy game. And I really hadn't thought much about this game. I'm like, what? And I started looking into it. And first of all, you think about it. South Carolina hasn't been really a player in the SEC since the Steve Spurrier days.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking a decade ago when they were last a decent team on the regular. And pretty much since then, they've been a second thought, and not even a second thought. You're like, oh, South Carolina, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, South Carolina. They're just another team in the SEC. Jadeveon Clowney, he played for South Carolina, right? I just remember the sack.
Was it a sack or I think it was a hit on the running back.
Was it on the running back? Was it a hit on the running? And he hit him
Bowl.
so hard that he actually blew his helmet off of his head.
In the Outback Bowl. That was amazing. It was against Michigan.
It was against Michigan. It was, yeah.
And that's why I loved it even more. And so South Carolina has kind of been one of those teams that might have gone by the wayside, and you don't think about them as much in the bigger landscape of college football and in the Southeast Conference. Texas A&M, they're new to the SEC within the past few years, and all this conference realignment is another crazy part of the college football landscape, the CFP. Texas A&M, to me, has been one of those programs that has been way overhyped.
Every year. Overranked, overhyped. The expectations are unfair because they just don't have that level of talent.
Well, but that's the crazy thing, Heather. They've got the money. And now with NIL,
the money. Yeah.
They could do it. I mean, look at how much they paid Jimbo Fisher to go away.
Right.
So, you think about this game, and on paper, like you said, you're like, this is not going to be a big deal. Texas A&M should win this, no problem. Not going to happen. That was crazy town. And I mean, I don't know, for Texas A&M, their quarterback position has not really been great. And I mean, I'm sad to say, since basically Johnny Manziel.
Yeah.
I mean, they've had some guys that were all right. I mean, we've seen them come through our doors. Manziel, Kellen Mond, both proud Browns alumni.
Right. Well, proud is maybe. Although Johnny Manziel, after that documentary, I don't hate him as bad. Like he's not all there. You don't feel bad for him. Yeah.
You got to watch how much time. But so Texas A&M, I look back and I'm like, okay, so Connor Weigman, the starting quarterback, he's missed time this season. He gets replaced by Marcel Reed. Reed leads them to 3 straight wins, and then Weigman comes back in the LSU game. He gets benched midway through the game.
Half in the second half.
Right.
Yeah.
He gets benched, and Marcel Reed comes back and leads them to a victory over LSU. I mean, it's a huge victory, a big conference game.
Huge victory.
And you look at it, and the thing is, they were in the driver's seat of the SEC. They were undefeated going into that game against South Carolina at 5-0. Now things are a little bit dicey if you start looking at the standings.
Right. Because I think it still is that old adage of lose early and you're okay. So whereas in Alabama lost early, Georgia lost early. Now Alabama has lost twice, but are they going to are they going to give credence to a Texas A&M who lost to an unranked South Carolina over an Alabama who has quality wins? You know, how quality is that win going to be? The LSU Alabama game? You know, we're going to talk about that here, but
yeah, but then again, you look at Alabama, who'd they lose to? Oh, they lost to Vanderbilt.
Right.
And Vanderbilt's not bad, but they're in the same class as South Carolina.
But Vanderbilt almost beat Texas. They only lost 24-27, and Vandy was ranked. So, you know, that's where these lose early, because these teams, some of these unranked teams that you lose to early have a chance to become ranked. And I think that the committee looks at it's 2020 vision in a sense. It's 2020 hindsight vision. Okay, maybe they were bad when they beat them or when they lost to them, but now they're ranked. And, you know, do we take that into consideration? So there's the human element of it, looking at, okay, where are they ranked now versus where were they ranked when they lost to that team? So I think that Vanderbilt almost beating Texas and being ranked is going to help Alabama.
It may very well do so. And so, you know, you talked about those close losses and how much things are going to, the Vandy's, you know, what they did against Texas. Well, let me throw that counterpoint here. South Carolina, they lost 36-33 to LSU.
They did.
They lost by 3 to LSU, and they lost by 2 to Alabama.
They did.
They're no chump. The point, you know, it's crazy.
Right.
And again, the fact that we are now expanded to this 12-team field is going to make it very interesting all the way to the end. And if you think about it, Heather, the fact that you could have a team that let's say they scheduled a really tough first 3 weeks of the season against non-conference opponents, and they lose all 3, and we'll get to the CFP, but then they go undefeated in conference play, win the conference championship. They may not be, you know, they've got 3 losses, but well, they're in because they're a conference champion. So
they are.
It's crazy stuff like that. So anyway, I digress on that, but the long and the short of it, you know, South Carolina took advantage of Texas A&M and they whooped them. They whooped them, bottom line.
It wasn't just okay, we would be having a completely different conversation here if it was let's say it was a 44-45 loss, right? Or we would be talking about, you know, exposing Texas A&M's defense, but their offense could still compete. They only put up 20 against South Carolina. They allowed over 500 total yards to South Carolina. I mean, it was an embarrassing loss. It wasn't just a loss. It was an embarrassing loss.
It was. They got crushed on the ground. I mean, for the Gamecocks to run for 286
yards. Yeah.
I mean, Raheem Sanders, 144 yards, 2 Ds. And the quarterback, Lenora Sellers, he had 106 yards on the ground himself, as well as 1 rushing touchdown to go along with 244 through the air with 2 TDs, no interceptions. They killed him. They killed him.
Yeah. It wasn't even close. I mean, it was one of those games where if you're an A&M fan, you're turning it off at halftime and you're just going to go lick your wounds and hope, you know, and you hope that Alabama loses. You hope that Alabama loses again. Now you need all of these other things to happen in an effort to get in. And that's where I am loving this season, because it's not a straight road. All of these teams that we're watching have had a straight road. Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, you know, all of these teams, Texas, they were in control as long as they won, as long as they beat the teams that they were supposed to. Now, a Texas and a Georgia, they did have a little bit of a tougher season this year, a tougher schedule this year, because they did schedule ranked opponents. And, you know, you had Oregon, you had the SEC just beats up on each other. And now it's looking like the Big Ten is beating up on each other because we have so many that are ranked. But you have these teams that really are in control of their own destiny. They don't need these wild, crazy things to happen. And we'll get into it, but the team I feel most sorry for right now that needs some wild and crazy things to happen is going to be Indiana. If they lose to Ohio State, they could have one loss to a top 2 or 3 team and not make it they'll make it into the playoffs, but they won't make it in as a very high seed. They won't get that bye. They won't be a Big Ten champion. They will have a magical season, and really they're going to have to be even more magical in the postseason. So we'll get into that. I'm getting ahead of myself, but
it's hard not to.
Yeah.
It's hard not to, Heather. It's very exciting.
It is because you need all of these exciting things to happen now. And I think that this has been one of the most fun seasons. I don't know for you, but for me, this has been one of the most fun seasons I've watched in a very long time, because it's a 12-team playoff now. And how many teams are going to take advantage of that? How many teams are going to blow their own opportunities? What's going to happen? There are so many losses every single week. There are upsets, and you're watching this unfold, and you're like, okay, every week it's worth watching every game, because you never know what's going to happen.
Exactly. There's no one as much as Oregon is undefeated right now.
We only lost by 1 on the road.
Right.
They looked fallible.
Sure, any given day, any team can beat any other team, and you don't feel like it's completely dominated and lopsided, and so much can happen. I mean, again, Heather, as a fan of college sports, as we are, think about March Madness, and that's kind of the fun here is that you might get in. Like, so some team is going to get in a non-power 5, or the best of the non-power 5 might get in. And you're looking at them as a 12 seed or whatever it is, and taking number 5 on the road. Because right now, as it stands, Ohio State would be taking on
BYU.
Boise State.
Or Boise State. I'm sorry, Boise
State. And Boise State is no chump. And it's gonna, it's gonna be super exciting. Bottom line, that's where I'm going with that. But I think for A&M now, to kind of go, take it back to that just a little bit here. A&M is still sitting now. I don't know all their conference tiebreakers. They are sitting at 5-1 atop the SEC, along with Georgia 5-1. They've got Texas in their final game, so a rival game. They're home to Texas. And, that's going to be huge to determine, A, if they're going on to possibly the SEC championship, and B, if they suffer a third loss, are they going to be in? I don't think so.
I don't either. I don't know how you could put a 3-loss team in over when you're going to have so many quality 2-loss teams. I just don't know how you're going to justify putting a 3-loss team in. And that, I think, I can't wait for that game, because that's going to have massive implications for Texas. That's going to be a game changer for both A&M and for the Longhorns, because Texas is not playing so great right now. I'm not sure what happened. I am not sure what happened, but they're not playing good at all right now.
It's Matthew McConaughey's fault.
Oh, let's blame him.
It's those stupid band uniforms.
There you go. It's their mascot. They need
Bebo.
They need a better mascot.
Clearly,
they need a better coach. They need a defensive-minded coach. That's what I think.
Yeah, apparently it's certainly been turned a little bit rough for them.
Yeah, it has. Quinn Ewers is unscripted, but Quinn Ewers is not playing well. He's all of a sudden he's in his own head. And I had someone on last week, and we were talking about this, and he was saying how he had heard that Quinn Ewers is in his own head because he knows that Arch is nipping at his heels. But I was like, did he watch Arch when he was put in the game against Georgia? Because he didn't do very well. And you can't expect that out of him. He's a true freshman who hasn't really seen a meaningful snap of football this year.
Sure.
But if that's really accurate, I don't know. Roger, no. We have a comment that Roger wants to know if we can get a Go Blue. And no, we can't get that.
No, we can't.
No,
we're biased on this show. We're biased.
We are.
And you know what? What did I tell you and Sherry the other week? That actually, I thought that Michigan should be prouder of its performance this
You did.
year and
You
what
did.
they've
And
done
then what they did last year. Yeah.
than
Yeah.
what they did last year, because they're busting their butts and they don't have a Connor Stallions on the sidelines, and you don't have the guy picking his nose and wearing his khaki pants, and you're
I
in
know.
great shape there.
I know.
You know,
I know.
I don't admire Dan Lanning. Pisses me off though.
I don't
that
like Dan
guy-
Lanning. I don't like Dan Lanning at all.
That crap he pulled in
Yes.
Michigan last week, that's some bull bleep right there.
I know. I don't like Dan Lanning. I don't like him at all. I don't
He's
like
gonna
him
get
at
his
all.
comeuppance.
Yes, he is. Because karma always comes around, because someone is going to do to you what you think is cute. You know, you thought it was cute to do that. And it's going to come at the most inopportune time for him. And I can't wait. I can't wait to see it.
Exactly.
So we can move on to, we only have a couple more games to talk about one more game to talk about from last week before we get into the big matchup of Penn State and Ohio State. But I wanted to quickly touch on the Clemson-Louisville game, because that one was another upset. And that one was another pretty big upset. Clemson, number 11 Clemson, lost to Louisville. And just for everybody's knowledge, do not call it Louisville. Do not ever call it Louisville, because I work with a bunch of people who are in Kentucky. And if you call it Louisville, they will like hang you. They will burn you at the stake. It is Louisville. Okay. they get so upset with me. Sometimes I just do it to be a jerk now to them.
Well, I'll tell you what, it is funny because, well, as we're Ohioans, and I lived in Stark County, I know Louisville.
Yeah.
And then furthermore, my in-laws being from North Carolina, born and raised, but it's not Fayetteville. They pronounce it Fedville.
Okay.
And then living in Virginia now, we don't pronounce it Norfolk, because it's Norfolk. FLK, Norfolk. No, it's Norfolk. Like,
Okay.
I'll say, nah, F this is what I'm saying.
Not F this. I got it. See, everybody that's tuned in, you learn something more than you would think just tuning into a college football pod. You learn how to pronounce the names of cities properly. So follow us for more inspiration here. So Louisville beat Clemson, and I'm not gonna lie, I am petty. I am, but I love Ohio State. I am petty. I like seeing Clemson lose. I still like seeing Clemson lose, and that you had some really good notes on this. That loss for Clemson snapped a 6-game winning streak after that opening loss. So where does that put Clemson now? I think that Clemson was probably I think that Clemson was overranked. I think that since Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson, I think that Dabo, we're not going to talk about that. That's a whole other show. Dabo needs a really good quarterback in order to be a really good coach. I think that he goes as his players go. And okay, so what do you think about the whole downslide of Clemson now?
Okay, so I think everybody knows it. Dabo doesn't want to, or doesn't seem to want to, adjust to the new age of college football and the NIL and everything like that. And what is it? Well, he made some asinine comments about our players are made in the mold of God or something.
Yeah, that's just not.
I'm like, shut up.
Right, you can still love God and love money. Like the two are not mutually exclusive here.
Yeah, and I don't know what the deal is, but my thought is this. I mean, hey, congrats to them winning, it's so relevant. 2015, 2016, 17, 18, and 19, and they won 2 national championships and lost 2 others. I mean, that's pretty incredible. I mean, they stood in the way of the Buckeyes one year with that an illegal hit. And then Jordan. Why is it that every time that we've had a couple of trips to the playoffs, Ohio State has, and we've gotten guys getting crushed in the head, yet nothing gets called.
Right. That Georgia game is I'm still bitter about that Georgia game.
Exactly. So I think that just in general, Clemson's on a downslide. They haven't had a quarterback since Trevor Lawrence. They thought it was going to be DJ Uiagalelei, and
Yeah, yeah, it is.
And then he wasn't the dude. And Cade Klubnik, come on, Klubnik. I just see that name and I think that sounds punchable. I don't know why. It just
it's right in the throat, or at least a kick in the shin. Paul just had a good comment. He said that he still has defensive players, but that D hasn't been the same since Brent Venables left. And I definitely, yes, he still has the talent there, but maybe not the coaching. And maybe
I know what it is, Heather. I know what it is. See, Brent Venables has a very punchable face. And so his anger just on his face must have driven the players because he sure
like, I need to get on the field. I feel violent. I can't punch my coach, so I'm going to go out and I'm going to hit.
Exactly. No, and Venables hasn't been good in Oklahoma, to be quite honest.
No, he has not been good in Oklahoma.
So I mean, a lot of circumstances worked out very well. And you look at the landscape of the ACC, and teams have not been good on a regular basis there. You'd see some, flashes in the pan since, gosh, I don't know, Florida State every once in a while. Miami hasn't been relevant until this year. Like, they haven't been relevant in ages. They were still playing at the Orange Bowl when they were last relevant.
Yeah.
And so the competition in the SEC is a bunch of trash. And, so Clemson has a pretty easy ride through it. And they're in the CFP, and they were good. I'm not going to take anything away. They won it, but I'm just saying.
They were very good. They had, it was one of those teams where everything just fit. It was sort of reminiscent of, do you remember when Florida basketball, that was the Joakim Noah era and the Al Horford era, like that still hurts because we would have been national title. But it was reminiscent of that, where they just had that team that stayed together for so long, and they had that talent, they had that incredible talent. But then once they all graduated, the program just kind of went down, and they were just mediocre. They were okay. They weren't great. They weren't horrible, but they were definitely not good enough to win it all. And I think that's where we're seeing, and I don't think that Dabo knows how to adjust to that. It's sort of like a Nick Saban. Nick Saban did not like the new landscape of college football. I don't know if that had a factor in him retiring, but yeah,
and here's the problem. So now you talk about what's the bigger picture for Clemson the rest of the way. They're behind Miami and SMU, who are both Miami's in the top 4. SMU is at 13 in the CFP. Both of them, neither of those teams have a conference loss yet.
They don't.
Clemson doesn't play either of them.
No, and they don't have a hard schedule coming up. Not really.
Right. So they need one of those two teams to trip up in order to sneak into the conference championship and give themselves an opportunity to get in. Because other than that, it's going to be very difficult to climb all the way back up, I think. And the conference championship might be their only way.
Yeah, and I just don't see that happening. Miami seems to be very lucky this year. They are not playing great for like 2-3 quarters, and then all of a sudden they, like last week, the first half, they were, I thought, man, is Miami going to do what Miami has been doing? And then all of a sudden they put up a bazillion points in the second half. Well, the fourth quarter, actually, they just turned it on like at the end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter. So I just don't see Clemson climbing out of this hole. And
they might very well.
They could sneak in.
They've got at Virginia Tech. Tech used to be a very tough place to play. They haven't been good in years.
No.
At Pitt. Pitt has played pretty well.
Yes, they have. Pitt has played. They were undefeated for a while. So
right. And so that's not an easy game. Then they're playing the Citadel. Nice scheduling there at the end of the season. What is the deal with that? Like, I get it. Everybody plays the gimmies
Play them at the beginning.
Why
play them at the beginning?
Why are they just snuck in there at the end of the season? But then they got a home date with South Carolina, who we just talked about.
Right, who could play spoiler. So I actually see that as a trap game for Clemson, and I think that they lose that game because South Carolina isn't going to have anything to lose at that point, and they're just going to go out and they're going to play free. Whereas Clemson is going to have to go and they're going to have to be perfect in an effort to be able, because they have to control their own destiny at this point, and they have to hope that other things happen. So I look for the South Carolina game to be a trap game for them because of the pressure, and I'm not sure those players are going to be prepared to
I'd like to see somebody fall down the hill when they're running in.
Dabo.
Okay, all right. I didn't say it, but yes, I'd like.
I'll say it.
You got it.
We just got a question, Buckeye Nation. I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but what do we think about Bama making the playoffs, and what chance do we think they have? We're actually going to talk about that at the very end when we talk about the college football landscape, the playoff landscape. So just give us a little bit, and I promise we'll get to it. So it's a really good question, and we have that prepared. So, and Brad said he always loves seeing Dabo take an L. We're with you. We're with you. We like that. And we're sorry to our Clemson friends on here, but we're still.
No, we're not.
Yeah, we're still a little bitter. We can't help it. So I think, in closing, I think that Clemson, I do think Clemson loses to South Carolina. I'm not sure that Clemson even makes it into the playoffs with all of the other teams that are going to be ahead of them.
They have a very difficult time leaving.
They have a very hard road. Yep.
They do. Absolutely. They are set up. It's difficult already with the 2 losses, and now you got to jump over some teams. So we'll see how that goes. But I mean, and Louisville, a bit of a fall down, difficult season for them. Last year they were in the conference title game. Now, I will say they lost to a broken Florida State team. I mean, Florida State was down to nothing, and they still couldn't do jack squat. So I don't have any pity on them.
None.
And other than the fact that, one Donovan Spida Mitchell is an alum of Louisville.
So it's really hard to hate because I like Donovan. I love Donovan Mitchell. I love the Cavs. So a little plug, a shameless plug, that the Bougie Sports, and I'm going to be a part of that on Tuesdays. We're going to start doing a Cavs podcast because I'm hoping that Isaac Okoro just notices it and sends me a pair of his shoes. That's all I want. I want to pay, even if they don't fit, just give me an autographed pair of your shoes and I'll frame them. I already have an autographed jersey, so we're just going to get a little shameless plug in there.
All right, but can you work with him on his jumper?
No, I can't. He needs to. I want to tell him to stop with the threes. Stop taking. Do what you do.
He has to. He's got to hit him.
Please just do what you do best. Play defense, dive on the court, so we'll have to, I'll have to have you on the show. We could talk about Cavs all day.
Yes, ma'am. You got it.
So we are going to get into the matchup, the marquee matchup, the game, and it did not disappoint. Ohio State fans, it gave us an ulcer. I'm going to tell you, I was ready to die. And we are going to talk about Ohio State, Penn State, and that offensive juggernaut.
And what a game. I mean,
what a game.
I'll tell you what, the thing that was the best about it for me not only was it Ohio State won, but they won it in a different way than they have in years past. They had to play tough defense.
Yes, they did.
For Penn State, James Franklin, in my opinion, is a consummate choke artist.
Yes, he is.
And he's 1-9. We talked about this leading into this as we were going into, and James Franklin now 1-9 against Ryan Day and Ohio State. Not just Ryan Day, but against Ohio State.
No, but Ohio State, yeah.
And he's got to be able to win those games, and he just can't do it. Their offense was putrid. It was putrid.
Their offense was it was absolutely pathetic. And I don't know if it was play calling. I don't know if it was execution. I don't know if it was a combination. Or maybe we're not giving enough credit to the Ohio State defense because they had a plan. Jim Knowles called a flawless game, and our boys executed a flawless game. Now, did we have penalties? Yep, we sure did. We've got to clean that up. We've got to clean up our secondary. We've got to clean up that DB play. But they had big plays where it mattered, where they needed it. I have the. I can. Let me. Oh, I lost the clip because let me see if I can add it. So let's talk about Davison Igbinosun. And that was, to me, it was the biggest play of the season. It was the biggest play of the season because that was a complete and total game changer.
It went both ways. It really went both ways, Heather, because if you recall in the flow of the game, as I'm sure you do, because I know you were watching and you were watching closely, but on one end, first of all, the fact that Will Howard gifts them 7 points, and apparently I was listening to something and there was a miscommunication on the route, whatever it was.
Well, he telegraphed that one. He telegraphed that one right to
again. Yeah, he did, and apparently I heard something today where there was some discussion that maybe something was misread. Bottom line,
right. A route that was a blown route. I mean,
right. And so it led to the pick six, but then to come back from that, and then Ohio State's really in control, and Will Howard is running for the end zone and gets it knocked away. And the worst possible thing that could happen happens, and one of the worst rules in sports. The ball, what are the chances of it going off of his thigh, then through the end zone?
Right. So it's a touchback, and don't you? So I love X. I've met some amazing people on X and some of my best friends, and it's given me this platform. But the dark side of it is all of the people who just shit on these players when they have no idea. That was the biggest fluke play ever. It was a fluke. It wasn't sloppy football. It was the biggest fluke. Like, it was just one of those things where it just happens. And you couldn't even, I was just like, woof. But I wasn't like, oh my God, Will Howard sucks. Like, people were calling for him to be benched, and they were, it was awful. It was awful.
It was. And it's a lot of, people get a little over the top sometimes. And,
yes, they do.
And again, I think, so as you started talking about Igbinosun and his interception, just as much so, the play from the defender for Penn State was just as great. The fact that he did not give up on it and he made the effort. And gosh darn it, sometimes that's the most important thing.
Exactly.
Gotta give credit where credit is due.
That. Yes, you respect that. You respect that hustle, because we could talk about, okay, let's with the Igbinosun Iggy, because I have a hard time saying his last name. With the Iggy interception, it was almost like a redemption thing, because the play before that, he had that hold, and that gave them the defensive hold, and it gave them a first down, and it put them, it was half the distance, and it put them right. They were going to score with no time left on the clock. So I have the clip.
No hands and no darling, I don't dance, and I'm with Roscoe, I'm with Walker. I think I deserve it.
Okay, look at this.
Possession with his foot still down. That might be an interception.
That was an interception, Joel. So
look at this one.
Let's take a look at it.
I didn't see how quickly he got possession, but watch how quickly he grabs the football. You can see he's got
one foot in, and he's got possession of that ball.
That's going to be a pick.
Yep.
Hey, Heather, did you know that's going to be a pick?
I love Gus and Joel. I can listen to them I love them. I know nobody likes Joel. I know that. I love Gus. Gus is a national treasure.
Well, let me say this. I think actually, I'm going to have to, it's okay. We can have a friendly disagreement. First of all, Gus needs to ditch the 1920s mob mustache. It's ridiculous. Yeah. Okay. Second of all, his over the top thing, and maybe it's because I've had to sit through Ohio State losing to Michigan for 3 years in a row and hear him touchdown Michigan.
I mute it. That's why I mute it.
I listened. So what I did is I was a little bit behind on the video, but I took my Sirius XM, sent the Ohio State radio up to the sound bar, watched the video, and listened to Paul Keels, who is doing the color commentary with him, because it's awful. It is horrific. And then they send it down to the sideline, and the guy has no clue. He brings nothing to the
He
broadcast.
brings nothing to the table here. They need someone like us. They need someone with passion. They need someone who's going to be animated.
Exactly. We got to go down. Yeah, we're going to go down to Jim Corsadas on the sideline. Paul. I mean, that
He's like Don Knotts, reminiscent of Don Knotts. Just
exactly.
The same thing over and over and over and over again. No, I don't listen to the radio. I prefer to listen to the games on mute because I get very insane when Michigan game. I will watch it by myself because I don't want anybody around me. I get very worked up. I drink by myself. And you know what? If that's a problem, then so be it.
No, I think that's perfectly normal. For many a year prior to the Tressel and Urban Meyer days, there would have been a lot of times I would have sat and watched that game by myself. Not because I didn't have friends, but because my ex-wife and my current wife, neither of them really gave a flying rat's patoozie. So
they don't care. And my problem is that I care too much. So you got to find someone in the middle. You got to find someone normal.
Yeah, it's all good. So I would just watch by myself, but there was a lot of nervous energy all those days.
Yeah.
And we grew up at the same time period, watching the team screw up every year to Michigan and blow it with John Pooper.
You're right. John Pooper. He didn't get it. Now the difference is with Ryan Day. I do think that Ryan Day does get it. I do think that he's desperate for that win. And I do think that if given the opportunity this year, he is going to run the score up on them. I do think Ohio State never covers the spread. Ohio State never really, especially with Ryan Day, we just don't like to score late in the third quarter and the fourth quarter. We like to run the ball. And okay, case in point against Penn State, we played it really, really, really safe in the fourth quarter, and we ran the ball. Wasn't it like 19 times or something like that in the fourth quarter? And it worked. It worked. Thank God. We got that running game going. We got Judkins, we got Henderson. And let's talk about that O-line. Let's biggest surprise to me of the entire game was that offensive line and how they were able to block and how they were able to create holes for runs. We hadn't seen that all year. So was the key the movement that they had, the shifting of some of the players? What was it? What do you think?
Well, okay. So first of all, we were on our third string left tackle.
We were
third string left tackle, and they figured it out. It's the true
next man up.
True next man up and team sport. Everybody has to work together, and they did. And you saw the confidence build, and to be able to run it 11 consecutive times, starting on your own 1 yard line, run it 11 times, and Penn State never gets the ball back.
No,
I mean, I don't know which was more impressive, the 2 goal line stands or the drive to end the game.
But I think that they're equally, because it was just both sides of the ball stood when they needed to stand. They were men when they needed to be men, and they had that bend but don't break mentality, both sides of the ball. And I feel like Henderson and Judkins said, put your trust in us. We've got this. We've got you. We're going to do this. You guys have done your job. Let us do our job. And they did it together. And they were equally as impressive. I think that Henderson and Judkins, it was a coming out party in a sense because they did it together. And maybe they weren't explosive, like they had been against lesser teams, but they did it against a defense. Say what you want about Penn State's offense, but their defense is always good. Always.
Absolutely.
Year in, year out. They are is it Penn State that's linebacker you, or Penn State is
they're very good.
They are very good. They are very good. They are very good. And what we were able to do against them, and in theory that, if that freak accident hadn't happened with Will Howard, in theory, that would have changed the entire tone of the game because they would have scored. And they looked really impressive, I think, against a solid defense. Now, Ohio State's offense needs a little work. And, we can talk all day long about how Penn State doesn't have a great offense and they don't have an explosive offense, but they're consistent. And I think what Ohio State managed to do was play, I don't want to say clean because there were penalties. Of course, there were penalties. Of course, there were penalties against Ohio State, but they managed to play that bend but don't break football. And really, what more could you ask?
No, you really couldn't. I mean, so much we've seen over the past 3 seasons of Ohio State losing in the biggest moments has been getting beat up and bruised and battered in the trenches. And that to me is just a weird thing in college football.
Yeah.
The change to the spread offenses and moving away from just the power I or whatever. And I'm just showing my age here. But even with Jim Tressel, we were bread and butter. You're going to pound the ball, and he respected playing the field position game. Some of the national championship season in 2002, that wasn't pretty. I mean, Craig Krenzel, he wasn't exactly lighting the world on fire.
No, he was not. They were the Luckeyes that year. That was the Holy Buckeye. They barely won they barely won almost every game. It felt like they classic Tressel ball. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Had my finger on the 9, had the defibrillator pad off to the side. It was difficult there, but no, that was it was really good to see them win in the trenches. They needed to win a game in that manner.
Right.
And that sets them up. Hopefully that sets them up well, and they can't have a letdown this week.
No,
and
they
Penn
sure
State,
can't.
and Penn State needs to keep on winning because right now they're not in an enviable position when it comes to the Big Ten standings, because not only are they behind, they're behind Oregon, Indiana, and Ohio State.
Yeah.
And Ohio State has the tiebreaker now.
Correct. Yep. So. Yeah. Again, Ohio State controls their destiny. They really kind of Purdue, Northwestern, and then they play Indiana, but they play Indiana at home. So I can almost guarantee you that's going to be a night game unless Fox needs ratings for their big noon kickoff and then they put it at noon again. But I can almost see that being a night game, and a night game in the shoe is a little bit more. It's not an enviable thing to be in the shoe at night.
Although I'm going to just point out, we lost to Matt Barkley and USC at night. We lost to Baker Mayfield at night.
We did.
Yes.
We lost
to Virginia Tech at night.
I know.
We lost to Michigan State at night.
Right. But if you look at some of those teams, though, if you do look at, I know they weren't Ryan Day coached. That's what we're gonna go with. That's what we're gonna go with here. Now, in the Virginia Tech game lit a flame, and that's the year that we won. So,
and how tough that was for me, Heather. That was very difficult for me being in Virginia.
Yeah.
And for UVA football is nothing. More people are, if they're going to adopt a team from their state, they're adopting Tech. And so I definitely was around some folks, and that sucked, and that was not cool. But anyway, moving on.
I feel like we can close this out because we're getting down to, and maybe we just talk about, there's so much to talk about. I think that was a turning point for Ryan Day. I think that he desperately needed that. And I think that is hopefully going to be the turning point that he needed, because we kept talking about, I know we had talked about it, and I know that I've talked about it on my show. He just needed to get over that hill. And I'm hoping that this was the hill that he needed to get over. So it was a big win. It was a big win. It was a big moral win for us too. So
definitely.
We could preview the games of the week, but the LSU Bama game, I think that we could just talk about that really quickly, because I do want to get into the first playoff rankings came out, and I know that people are wanting to hear, and I do want to talk about the difference between seedings and rankings for those of you who are unfamiliar. Like me, I had to research that and look. I'm like, wait, what's the difference here? So LSU Bama, let's do a quickly. Who do you think is going to win that game, and just a brief why?
Yeah, that's a good question there. I am thinking that Bama's been inconsistent,
Yes,
but
they
I
have.
feel like I feel like they should be able to take down LSU. I feel like they're okay, but they're not great. I give it the slight edge to Bama. I just believe if they can play clean, they've got it. I mean, Jalen Milrow is very talented.
He is.
If they can get the running game going, they're going to be in good shape. And Ryan Williams, him and as a freshman receiver, he and Jeremiah Smith are like 1 and 1A or
They are.
whatever.
Yeah.
And
Any given play, who is it going to
it,
be? Yeah, who do you guard?
exactly. So
Yeah.
I would give the edge in this one to Bama. I mean, LSU took it on the chin. They didn't, they got crushed by Texas A&M in their
Yes, they
last
did.
game.
Yes,
They
they
did not
did.
look good.
Nope.
So it's a rivalry game, but I'm gonna go Bama.
I'm going to go Bama by 10, I think, because Bama by 10, depending on which Milrow we see. If we see the Milrow that is a first rounder and potentially a top 2 or 3 pick in the draft, I think that you will maybe even, 14, 20, because Milrow can put him up. He can put him up. And Alabama's defense is still Alabama's defense. But he's been very inconsistent this year. And he has these bouts where he looks like he's just not in it. Just his heart's not in it. His head's not in it. I'm not sure what it is. I don't know if it's a new offense. I don't know if it's the new coaching staff. I don't know what it is. But he has those moments where he just looks a little bit not interested.
Well, overall, the fact is we talked about early on that loss to Vandy, and what I was kind of researching and reading was the issues in their losses were, one, in the Vanderbilt game, they kind of abandoned the run, and then in the loss, against oh geez, like now my head is missing here as to who their other loss was to, but again, they they couldn't run in
Right.
their, and so it's one of those things, but it's we'll see. They're not the same Bama as they were, as we
They're
talked
not.
at the outset. Not the same juggernaut.
Nope. No, they're not as infallible as they used to be. They're not that scary. You're not going into Bama thinking they're unbeatable. They're not big bad Bama anymore.
Not right now.
No. Maybe they'll get back to it, but not right now. They're not. So let's get into the playoffs. So
Absolutely.
exciting stuff here. So the first playoff ranking was released. First question: do you think that they got it right?
At first glance, I do think that they did well. I mean, I could sit here and look. If I try to go all the way down through 25, I'm going to start scratching my head because I really don't know. So I'm focusing on the spots that are going to get in.
Yep, me too. That's exactly what I did, because I don't know. I'm going to be completely honest. I don't know enough about an Army or a Mizzou or a Louisville. I don't know enough about I know that their schedules aren't great. I know enough about that. I haven't had enough time to dive into, that bottom half. And do you think with the bottom half, like let's say 1 through 15, do you think that there's such a massive drop off between like 15 and the bottom? Or do you think that any of those bottom teams could beat a top team? I feel like there's a massive drop off for some reason.
Okay,
I don't know.
well, all right, as I look at it, so first of all, I would say Iowa State. Yeah, we're giving them the big fart. All right. Pitt. Yep, they stink.
Yep,
Kansas State. Colorado is just interesting because of the Dion thing, and they do have Shador, and they've also got Hunter, and you never know. But Washington State, get out of here.
Right.
Louisville, Clemson, Missouri. I mean, I know. I'm sorry. I think that once you get maybe past 16 and Ole Miss, it's tough to see. And
yeah, there's a big drop off. To me, there's a big drop off. So
yep.
Let's go over. Okay. So for those of you that don't know, the rankings come out. So there's 1 through 12. 1 through 12 makes it no matter what. They're in. If you are ranked in the top 12, you're in. Now, how that works though is that you could be ranked in the top 4, but not have a bye because they're seeding. So the way that the playoffs are working this year is because there's only 4 power conference is, and I use power conference, the word, I use that word lightly because the ACC is considered in that conference. And, let's just be honest here. Not that I'm saying, Miami is decent, but they're not a power conference outside of Miami.
Right.
So if you win your conference, you automatically get a bye in the first round. You are automatically seeded in a 1 through 4 spot. So let's say, Ohio State will have to win the Big Ten championship to be seeded in the top 4. Even though they're ranked number 2, they have to be seeded in the top 4 to get a bye. So realistically, Ohio State could actually be a number 5 seed in the bracket, and they would end up playing Boise State. I keep wanting to call them BYU because Boise State, when
they're close, they're the same. I know.
In their ugly field. So, but BYU is actually ranked below Ohio State, but they would get the number 4 seed because they would be a conference winner. So if I just confused you, it's because this whole thing is a little bit confusing. And it just makes it exciting. It makes it like the March Madness because, okay, who is going to be playing who? Who is going to get a bye in the first round? And you've got to look at some of these teams you don't want to play. You do not. Let's say Georgia doesn't win the SEC. Georgia will be ranked lower. You don't want to play. You don't want to play Georgia. You want them to have a bye because you want to be able to get out of that first round unscathed and give yourself a chance. You don't want to play a Georgia. There was a question earlier about Bama. Do they make it? If they lose to LSU, absolutely not. There is absolutely no way. They're done. They're done. Alabama still needs a little bit of help to win, but they are they're safe right now.
If they win out, if I looked at their schedule correctly, if they win out, they will stay in. But right now, the chances of them making it to a conference title game are not there. So they have to win out.
Yes, they
have to win out. Same at this point. LSU, they can't afford a loss. They've got to win out because if they suffer another loss, they're toast, right? And in fact, as of this moment, they are toast. They're ranked 15th. They're out of it at this moment. And the point you made there was really a good one. Maybe you do want to miss a Georgia because the second starting in the quarterfinals, the second round, as it were. You're playing in a neutral field. You're playing in one of those bowl games, the traditional bowl games like we've seen. Yep. And so rather than have to travel to a Georgia or right now, Boise State is traveling to the shoe.
Correct. Yes. And that's you just don't want that. You don't want that. You don't want that home game atmosphere. You don't want to be in a away game in the first round because you need to make it out of that first round to get to that neutral site, to get your momentum, to get your confidence up. And I don't care. I do think that momentum is a real thing. And I think that extra layer of confidence is a real thing. And you win that first round. Look at how many upsets. Look at how many Cinderella teams there are always in March Madness, because you get those teams that go in and they win that first game and they're like, what do we have to lose? Let's just go in and we're going to play free. Like we made it this far and we're going to keep going. So if you play a Georgia in the first round, I think that's going to be tough. As it stands now, it's Texas and Alabama. It's unfortunate that it's not going to stay that way because man, would that be a game? That would be a ratings game. I do think I would give Alabama the edge. As it stood now, I would give Alabama the edge over a Texas just because of how Texas is playing and how Alabama is starting to gel a little bit more. It's a different Alabama team than it was when they played Texas.
Yes, exactly. And we'll see. So much can change. That's the other thing. And isn't it always fun when you start making these predictions and you think you know everything until next week, and then you don't know everything and things change. And the Texas-Alabama matchup would be fantastic if that's how it stood. Isn't it kind of funny how Notre Dame has screwed itself? Because by
not being
being independent, being an independent, they could be the number 1 team in the country undefeated,
and they will not get
a bye.
They'll never get a first round bye. So sorry for you, you know? Yeah.
So
Talk to
what
your
is-
athletic director about that. I don't know what to tell you. You guys are so worried about all that money. There's so much money out there. You guys are probably losing money by not being in that first round. Come on. You're still going to get nationally televised games. You're still going to get a massive piece of that revenue. So I don't know how you're helping yourself by not being in a conference and being independent, but good luck. Good luck. I don't know if Notre Dame makes it, they would be the team that I'd probably want to play the most. BYU. I feel like BYU will get mollywopped in the second round. I just don't feel like they are in a strong enough conference. I don't feel like they have the caliber of players that a Tennessee, an Indiana, a Penn State, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's going to be one of those things where no one sees them. They're not widely televised. There's not going to be a ton of film on them and a ton of people watching all the time. And so maybe they would surprise you, but I can't see them beating a Penn State, a Miami, a Texas and Alabama, some of the big programs in here.
Right. And I'm looking at their schedule, the Big 12 schedule. And I think that, so right now they're in first, and that's why they are where they are. But they're ahead of Iowa State.
Right.
They're BYU's 5-0, Iowa State's 4-1, Colorado is 4-1. And you have to start looking and saying, okay, well, who's going to play who? And right now I'm looking, Iowa State won't play them.
Nope.
And I looked and I think I just saw a moment ago, Colorado
won't play them. No.
Won't play them. So they've got a chance, they're not going to have to worry about that bump in the road. So they're
right.
at Utah, they host Kansas, they're at Arizona State, they host Houston. They've got a pretty easy road.
They do. Kansas, maybe Kansas does that sometimes. Kansas does that every now and then. Yeah.
It's one of those things. Well, actually, I shouldn't say Kansas. I mean, Utah's the big rival, of course.
Well, yeah, but Utah has really fallen.
They have
like an 8-year senior that's playing. So I don't know about. I don't see Utah giving them much of a problem, but maybe Kansas plays spoil sport because sometimes they do that. I've seen them do that in the past.
Exactly. And so there's a world in which, and again, neither Colorado nor Iowa State, they don't face each other. I don't know what's going to happen here. Could you see, again, wouldn't it be exciting if we got to see Coach Prime in the college football playoff?
Yeah, that would be so exciting. So exciting because that's all. But maybe it would be for the other teams because that is all the media would focus on. That is all anybody would talk about is Coach Prime and Shadir and that is all that would be that whole entire 2 or 3 weeks leading up to it. That's all anybody would talk about. So maybe if you were a team, you would want to face a Colorado because all eyes are off of you. Yeah, and you can do that proverbial, our guys are playing with a chip on their shoulder because, we've never heard that before from any players ever. Everyone goes and plays with a chip on their shoulder. But
Exactly. And I think that, Tennessee, they're a joke. I don't give me a break. They are the most overhyped turd-eating team. Get out of here.
Every year they do this. So before I was watching the college football playoff, the big reveal, the big mystery, they're hyping it up. And Booger, I can't stand him. But he was talking about 2 teams, one before and one after. So the first team that he was talking about that got the biggest disrespect was Indiana. And Joey Galloway, he was like, we haven't even revealed the teams yet. So how are you going to say that they're being disrespected? Let's wait until after to see if they're disrespected. And then after he was whining because he said he probably would have put Tennessee ahead of a Texas, I think he was saying. And I'm like, or a Penn State. I'm like, have you watched the same Tennessee team that we have? Tennessee to me, there's a very real possibility that if any other team falls off, that it isn't Bama, that it is Tennessee that falls off because they have a tendency to they're coasting along the cliff and then all of a sudden they just jump right off that cliff right into the deep end.
we've seen it season after
Over and
season
over
with
and
them.
over and
It,
over
it
again.
just constantly happens.
Yeah.
So they were busy smoking cigars after they beat Bama.
Yeah, they
All
were.
right, you do that. You do that.
Right.
You do that.
Right.
I'm
Right.
sorry. I love to see when the mighty fall.
I do too. I do too. I don't love Tennessee. I don't love Tennessee. They're not. I don't dislike them that much. I feel the same way about Alabama. You know, Alabama gets a lot of hate. I don't hate Alabama. I don't love them. And it's one of those things where you like to see teams like that lose just because, you know, it's just exciting as a fan that doesn't have any skin in the game. Let's talk really quickly though about the magic of Indiana this year.
Yeah.
Where did
Wow.
that come from? Where did that come from? Like who is this team and how exciting and fun is it to watch? Because it's a team that, you know, maybe if you're a Purdue fan, you hate Indiana, but outside of that, who hates Indiana? Like they are a basketball team. They are not a football team. So to see them doing what they're doing, it's been really fun to watch. And Curtis Rourke, what a tough, consistent, really good player. We are going to see him on Sundays. You mark my word.
All right, I'll mark it. I don't know where I'm going to mark it though, you know, but we'll see about that. No, I don't know. It's been kind of crazy because Indiana has been mired in crappiness for so long,
Yeah.
and to finally do this, I mean, they are on the verge. What did I read? Their first ever 10-win season.
Yep.
And they're the only team in the Big Ten that has never had a 10-win season. They're gonna get it.
They're going to get it for sure, and they're doing it in style. And like we talked about at the beginning of the show, though, it is so. I feel so bad for them. Now, I'm not assuming that we are going to beat them. I'm definitely not assuming that game is going to put me into cardiac arrest. I'm probably going to have to, someone is going to have to send me something. I'm going to have to be, you know, vodka and lemonade and, you know, maybe some Xanax or, you know, it's legal now. Anybody want to send me some edibles? You know, I'm open to all that because I'm going to be a mess. I'm going to be a nightmare mess. So I am in no way assuming that Ohio State's going to roll over Indiana at all. What I'm saying is that if Ohio State does manage to win, how unfortunate is it for Indiana that they will not get a chance to go to the Big Ten championship game? It will still be Oregon and Ohio State. As long as Ohio State and Oregon win out,
Yep.
It's just so unfortunate. Now, having said that, if that's Indiana's only loss, they're easily in. They're easily in. And I think they stay right around that 7, 8, 9 rank or seed in the. I think that they stay right around there because how can you punish them?
You wouldn't. And you saw that. And now, granted, this was the first week of the CFP ranking.
It's going to change.
But what I was going to say is you saw Penn State only drop a few spots when they lost to Ohio State. And when Ohio State lost to Oregon, they only dropped a spot or two.
I think they dropped 2 spots, yeah.
It's one of those things where, you know, they maybe, I don't know, whatever it is, they have had an incredible season, and no matter where it ends, and for them, obviously, they're not going to see it that way. I don't think, you know, maybe it'll take some time to look back on it that way, and certainly they want to get an opportunity to be in this playoff and show someone their best shot, give it their best shot, and see what they can do because it's really nice to see them finally be competitive. For so many years, they have just been downtrodden and beat up and. I don't even know if they're still a basketball school. They've been kind of rough there.
Yeah, man. The Big Ten is we're going to have to do when college basketball season starts. We'll have to talk about that. Maybe we'll do a pod on that too, because, you know, the Big Ten used to be the conference and now it's the last several years. They just haven't been, I'd say like probably the last 5, 6, 7 years. The Big Ten is always in the tournament. They're always sending teams in, but and you look at like how far in Indiana and how far Michigan State have fallen. And again, I can digress because clearly I love all sports. there's no sport that I don't. Well, I'm not very well versed in hockey, but yeah.
Oh boy, well,
I'm gonna have to change that.
You are. Most of us aren't well versed in it, but you know what? As someone, I was fortunate enough to get the broadcast of hockey,
Yeah,
And
that would be fun. I've heard that hockey games are really fun in person. That's where,
yes,
yeah.
yes, it's much better to be in person than it is to watch it, and it makes a world of difference when you're there. But nevertheless, so yeah, I mean, IU, fantastic story,
Yep.
and I'm gonna
Story of the
be
year, I think. For me, that's the story of the year. I think that's the feel-good story of the year. Outside of maybe, BYU or Boise fans would disagree, but I think just with their history, I think Indiana
yeah,
is the story of the year.
exactly, because Boise has had its
They have.
opportunities.
They
I mean,
absolutely have. They have.
and they've been in the biggest of
Yes, they
spots, and
have.
they have done fantastic.
Yep.
Remember the running back that proposed to his
I
girlfriend after the
absolutely right.
Fiesta
She was
Bowl?
a cheerleader, right? I remember that. Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
So, and how can you forget Kellen Moore? He's like the most
Yep.
famous, terrible NFL quarterback, offensive coordinator I've ever heard of, except for
I know.
Ken Dorsey.
Well, Ken Dorsey is like, hold my beer. Ken Dorsey. It's all right. We beat him. We beat him. So
Oh,
the Browns.
boy.
And some of these players that we're talking about, we're going to see on the field in a Browns uniform.
And it'll be disappointing.
Yes, it will be. It will absolutely be disappointing. And that's one thing that I think that upsets me about Ohio State is my expectations of the Browns every Sunday are let's not embarrass ourselves. Some days some Sundays they don't let me down. Like I was at the Baltimore game. I was at that game. They did not let me down. Last week they let me down. But you know what? It was what it was. When Ohio State loses, I take it personally. It hurts me because I have such high expectations of my Buckeyes. My pride tattoo is an Ohio State helmet. So they are marked on my body. I love Ohio State. So don't let me down, boys. We gotta win it all this year. And I think it's up for grabs this year. I think it's up for grabs.
Definitely. No, there's as we talked to the Open, it's a wide open field. No one particular dominant team, despite the fact that Oregon is undefeated. They have their flaws.
They haven't looked
And
unbeatable. Yeah.
no, we'll see how it goes, but it's going to be very interesting. I'm so excited for this expanded playoff. They have needed this.
Yes,
It
they
was
have.
great. It was great when they went to 4, and now it's even better at 12. And we know they're going to go to 16 in the near future.
I don't love that. I don't love the 16. I don't think, but you know what? The ratings and as a fan, it just gives me more It gives me more football to watch. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Especially when we're in the desert of the NFL world in Cleveland.
Like the February. Well, February is like really bad. You know what though? We have the Cavs. That's where loving the NBA has really helped, and loving the Cavs. That's where that's helped a lot. And I plan on going to some Cavs games this year. I've been to a couple of Ohio State games. I've been to a couple of what?
Have you seen the score of the Cavs?
I have not. I don't have it on.
49-24 in the second quarter.
Us or them?
Us.
I love this team. I love this team. We can close out really quickly with it's Kenny. It's the Kenny effect. The Cavs they're spacing the floor better. They're executing better. Kenny is got a better rotation. His starting lineup is not always consistent, and he's basing his starting lineup and is rotating his bench players in based on who is in the game. I don't think that JB did a good job. He just had the same lineup, the same bench, we're going to put the same players in all the time. So Ethan, I'm going to have you on a Tuesday where we can talk about the Cavs.
Absolutely.
That's where it's just going to be the Cavs. So for everyone watching, we'll go ahead and close this out because I know we're going on an hour and it's a Friday night. So what is coming up? What is coming up for us? Ethan, if you would like to, I would love to have you back on the show. I would love to have you back on. That would
anytime.
Okay.
And the invitation goes both ways. I want to tell everybody who loves Cleveland sports, who loves talking Ohio State. I love coming on and talking with you. I especially enjoy having you come on to my podcast, and always glad to have that. And so I think that it is such a bonding experience for us all to have that. It's nice to have, it's like an extended family.
Yeah.
so that we can all talk sports and be pissed off at the same time. Now, sometimes we don't agree
Yes.
on why we're pissed off,
Right.
but it's fantastic. But no, so absolutely, I would love to be back. I really appreciate the invitation, and it was a pleasure being here. And again, you are always welcome. Coming over to my
Anytime.
side.
Invite me anytime. Shoot me an email, send me a message, and I would love to, maybe after the regular season winds down and we get the final seeding, maybe you want to do a special with me and we can
Absolutely.
talk about, okay, all right, you guys heard it. He said yes. So we'll do a playoff special where that's all we'll talk about. So stay tuned for that. Again, please don't forget to Ethan, go ahead and remind everybody again where they can find you and follow you. Please follow my friend here. You can hear he's very intelligent, one of the nicest people on X, and you just don't find that often. So just a genuine, amazing human being. So please follow my friend and tell them where they can find you again.
Well, first of all, thank you. And the same goes to you. And it's nice to meet genuine people. You can find me at egreen4325. That's my personal Twitter profile handle. The podcast is at Going Nuclear CLE. On that page and on my personal profile, you can find the link to the YouTube, which is Going Nuclear CLE. Please, enjoy the podcast. We have a lot of fun there. I even, coerced my son into doing it. And
Your son's a little savant. He's a little genius. I was shocked when he pulled out the draft one. I'm like, dang. I'm like, okay, you get it.
I'm training well, but no. So yeah, please like and subscribe at Going Nuclear CLE and Bougie Sports. I'm so happy for you and to be a part of that with Yvette and Lysandra and Lana and Sherry, and it's just an amazing group, and so glad to be here with you.
Love those. I love those ladies. They have absolutely become some of my best friends, and that's where this platform has been quite amazing. So Ethan, I'll share your information on my page when I share this pod again. So you guys can, if you didn't catch that, you can find him. I will share all of your information. And again, follow us at Bougie Sports on X. Go to bougiesports.net and you'll find the link to YouTube there. You'll find the link to X. You'll find some of our profiles, us, the squad girls. So follow us, please. My handle's here, Love Buckeyes. And if you would like to be on an upcoming show, send me a DM. Please don't send me a DM. That's disgusting because I'm not going to answer it. I'm just going to ignore it. So if you want to talk sports, please send me a DM about that. Subscribe, do all the things, and stay tuned for all of the things that Bougie Sports has to offer. We've got a lot going on. There's a little bit of everything, so you can find something that you're interested in with the Bougie Sports squad. So thank you everyone for joining us on a Friday night. Thank you again, Ethan. This was amazing. Great banter, was a great conversation, and there's so much more to discuss, and we will give you the details on the college football playoff special that he and I will do on the Bougie Sports Network. So thank you, everyone. Have a really good Friday, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.